January 3, 2025, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Knott, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the majority party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the topic of this special order.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today alongside 4 of my esteemed colleagues to both highlight and condemn the misuse of taxpayer dollars funneled to illegal immigrants. An outrageous pattern of perverse and intentional incentives reveal deliberate efforts to worsen the border crisis and to allow tens of millions of illegal aliens to invade our nation at direct cost to the American taxpayer. The Biden-Harris administration cycled through repeated falsehoods, claiming the border was secure, claiming they did not have what was needed to stop this invasion, claiming that they were helpless and needed Congress to take the lead. Meanwhile, that same administration lined the pockets of left-wing NGOs to shower illegal immigrants with incentives in the form of open-ended access to your tax dollars. Earlier this year, reports surfaced from the watchdog group Open the Books, exposing Biden's Department of Health and Human Services for awarding shockingly large amounts of grants and dollars to nonprofits focused on aiding illegal immigrants, amounting to as high as 20 million people who illegally crossed into our country during Biden's term in office. Taxpayer-funded awards paid for illegal aliens housing, health care, education, even music lessons, therapy. You name it, you, the taxpayer, covered it. Using NGOs as a proxy, the Biden administration sent a clear message that our laws were not to be taken seriously, and living off of the American taxpayer was both acceptable and encouraged. The same people fueling this elaborate scheme also pushed a false narrative that supporting illegal activity somehow gives them a moral high ground. This, of course, is false. I am here to tell the American people that you are right to expect secure borders. You are right to demand law and order. You are right to be outraged that hundreds of billions of your dollars have gone to illegal aliens and politically connected NGOs who facilitated this recent invasion. President Trump's swift actions to halt illegal crossings and to deport illegal aliens in his first 100 days has made one thing painfully clear. The Biden-Harris administration was never working to fix our immigration system. They actively and deliberately worked to undermine it. The Center for Immigration Studies found illegal immigrants annually take, and this is a conservative estimate, annually take nearly $120 billion directly from public services to include public schools, public welfare, and health care. Every American across the country should expect more from their government. Joining me today are a few of my colleagues, and first I would like to introduce Congressman Tim Moore, my fellow North Carolinian and a fierce border security advocate. Congressman Moore has been a leading voice in the fight to reform FEMA and to ensure its funds go towards helping American citizens rather than to illegal immigrants, especially those recovering from Hurricane Helene. Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from North Carolina's 14th District.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Congressman Knott. And just a couple things about Congressman Knott for folks who don't know. Before he was a member of Congress here, he was actually a very well-esteemed prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, where I know, Congressman Knott, many stories you shared where you were personally having to prosecute a lot of these violent gang members, these MS-13 gang members that for some reason some of our comrades want to go down and hug a thug or something and see these folks down in Central America. You were helping prosecute these folks, and I know you all were very frustrated at the times with what you were seeing with these open borders, and so I appreciate you, one, what you did before you came to Congress, two, what you're doing now, and three, today, hosting this opportunity to bring attention to this to the American people. Mr. Speaker, today I rise on behalf of the people of North Carolina, and particularly Western North Carolina I represent, hardworking Americans playing by the rules, doing everything they can right, paying their taxes, raising their kids, taking care of their neighbors, whose lives, many of which were impacted substantially by Hurricane Helene that hit last year. It tore through our region, it destroyed roads, it destroyed homes, it took life, it changed so many things. But I will say the good news is the resilience of North Carolinians, and not only at government, not only local government, but volunteers, the faith community. I see my good friend Congressman Harris over there, the churches who stepped up in such a tremendous way to help folks out in such a serious time of need to do what they needed to do. But we also saw where the federal government in a lot of ways failed to do the job. We saw where under the past administration, FEMA wasn't doing the job. I'm proud to say that now under this new administration, FEMA is getting the job done. Many folks in here saw pictures that didn't live there of the mass destruction that was in Western North Carolina and the lack of response in so many ways. Just to kind of put some points on that with some numbers, according to the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General, FEMA could not account for $7.4 million out of a $12.9 million audit sample. Now, those sound like small numbers, but that's an audit sample. But think about that. That's 58% of those funds that were either unsupported or not properly documented. There was an example for, where one contractor billed $9 million for labor and could only support or back up $1.5 million of it. Another was reimbursed twice for the same $40,000 expense, and some grantees couldn't even prove they delivered services. FEMA had approved it all. Then you'd compare things where folks were needing help and they were getting the runaround, getting the delay. And again, I stress to folks, that has changed since January of this year. We're seeing FEMA getting the job done in a lot of ways. And I'll talk about what FEMA did with some of this other money in just a moment. But another example of some mismanagement in the previous administration, remember the so-called American Rescue Plan. Democrats passed a $1.9 trillion bill on a party line vote. Less than 9% of that money, by the way, went to combat COVID. But tucked inside that bill was $110 million to FEMA. We would think that's a great thing, right? Well, here's the problem. It wasn't for disaster recovery. It was to fund something they were calling humanitarian assistance. And what that was to help illegal immigrants at the border. That was just the start. Mr. Speaker, they followed it with another $150 million in March of 2022, then $800 million more in December of that year. FEMA was effectively converted into a border response welfare agency, rebranded as the Shelter and Services Program, paying for migrant housing, transportation, and services in sanctuary cities, while American disaster victims waited months just to hear back about their applications. Absolutely shameful. My constituents were patching their roofs, clearing debris by hand. FEMA was off here busy footing the bill for nice hotel stays in New York for folks that weren't even supposed to be in the country. This was a willful effort by the other side to just enable this border crisis. And I gotta say, Congressman Knott pointed out how the border is finally secure, and it didn't require a change in law. It simply required a president who would follow the law. So now what do we have going on that things have changed? Well, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle respectfully are not showing up in towns that were damaged by the storm, asking questions of FEMA, looking to go see what's happened. You know who has shown up? Secretary Knott has shown up. President Trump has shown up. Instead, no, some of my colleagues, and I don't know why, have decided they want to go to El Salvador and rub elbows and maybe grab a margarita with some former MS-13 gang members. It looks like it's a delegation face-to-face meeting with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a known member of MS-13, and that gang is responsible for countless murders, assaults, and human trafficking. Instead of demanding justice, Democrats took selfies. And I know, for example, you all had to prosecute MS-13, Congressman Knott, when you were back prosecuting in the Eastern District of North Carolina. Look, we don't need any more hug-a-thug diplomacy. We need a federal government that puts the American people first, puts their safety first, their livelihoods first, and their families first. My friends, we're still feeling the consequences of this failed border policy in North Carolina. Just last week, this picture to my right, the FBI of Charlotte, and I want to give a shout out to the FBI agents based out of Charlotte. They arrested an illegal immigrant who had already been deported. That's a picture of him right there. He was charged with the kidnapping of a mother and her one-year-old child in Garner, North Carolina. Again, that's in Congressman Knott's district right there. Kidnapped them. They tied her up, took the woman and the child at gunpoint, demanded $1 million ransom, and then dumped them in the woods. By the grace of God and the swift action of the FBI, Garner Police, and our State Bureau of Investigation, they were rescued. But that crime should have never happened. Estrada Hernandez should have never been in this country in the first place. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? He would not have been if it weren't for the Biden administration's open border policies and refusal to simply follow the law. Mr. Speaker, this is not compassion. This is not justice. This is chaos, engineered and endorsed by some on the other side. I do hope those on the other side who disagree with this will start stepping up and pushing back with what's happening there. But I'll say this too. Thankfully, under President Trump's leadership, we are cleaning house. The Department of Government Efficiency has exposed FEMA's failures in the past administration. Secretary Noem is working to get this agency back on mission, and Congress is moving to eliminate the Shelter and Services Program and to return those funds to real disaster recovery where they belong. To the families who are still recovering from Hurricane Helene, to those who were told there was no money left while FEMA lost track of millions, I hear you, and help is on the way. This, my friends, is what it means to put Americans first, to restore common sense, to lead with integrity, and with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Moore. Next, I would like to introduce my good friend, Mike Haridopolos, from Florida's 8th Congressional District, otherwise known as the Space Coast. Congressman Haridopolos and I have had many conversations about the cost of illegal immigration on programs that are designed to help and support vulnerable Americans, and especially Medicaid. Congressman Haridopolos has extensive experience in the Medicaid space, and he knows that it must be guarded to protect those who rely upon it here in the United States. It is not an international charity, and it's not especially for the illegal immigrants here in this country. To elaborate on his experience with this issue, I yield to the gentleman from Florida's 8th District.
Thank you, Congressman Knott. Thank you so much for holding this. And these are the kind of conversations that the American public needs to hear and understand the impact that illegal immigration is having on our country and how it undercuts the rule of law and really undercuts those people who truly want to play by the rules and enter the United States in a legal fashion. And it's frustrating when we can bring so many bright, conscientious people who want to come into the United States and you're deprived of these opportunities because of the long line that exists, because of the challenges we have with illegal immigration. And so I very much appreciate the Congressman leading the charge in this and bringing some of those who have experience with Medicaid to talk about the impacts that it has on our individual states. As we know, Medicaid is designed to help our most vulnerable citizens, seniors, veterans, kids, low-income families, and especially the disabled. But today, that lifeline is being strained by illegal immigration and open-door policies. While Democrats and sanctuary states deny the problem, the data is clear. Let's be clear that every dollar spent on illegal immigration is a dollar taken from a senior, a veteran, a child, a family struggling to pay the bills. For the past 4 years, the pattern has been very clear. Migrants cross the border, surrender to authorities. They repeat carefully rehearsed lines provided by NGOs to meet the bare minimum threshold for asylum. They are released into the country and set a court date and years in the future. Thus, they will begin to actually receive health care benefits at the expense of taxpayers who have already been hard hit by higher prices for basic things like gas, food, and rent. The burden is real. From 2017 to 2023, federal and state governments spent $27 billion on emergency Medicaid for non-citizens, according to the CBO. Also, according to the CBO, around $18 billion came directly from federal taxpayers, I mean every single American. Under the Biden-Harris years, Medicaid spending on illegal immigrants surged 124% higher than under President Trump. In 2021 alone, $7 billion was spent on emergency care for illegal immigrants. Meanwhile, Democrats in Washington and blue states are demanding that we actually pay even more. Now, to put this in perspective, as the congressman from North Carolina, Congressman Knott, mentioned, I'm from the state of Florida. And we actually audited how much we spent on Medicaid, on emergency care last year. $660 million for hospital care for illegal immigrants, according to the Agency for Healthcare Administration in Florida. $660 million. Dollars that were either intended to be spent on health care for American citizens, for maybe move the dollars around for education or for roads or to, of course, help our environment. But instead, people who came here illegally, $660 million. That is a substantial amount of money, and we will never get it back. And again, rewarding bad behavior. Now, how the system works is very frustrating. If you pay taxes in America, you're paying for illegal immigrants to get health care, whether you like it or not. Federal law requires Medicaid to cover emergency health care, period. That's just the law. You go to the emergency room, and that person qualifies, the American public pays for it. And states, of course, pick up the cost initially, but the federal government reimburses somewhere between 59 and 73% of those costs to the states. So American taxpayer dollars are being spent on this program, whether you like it or not. So reimbursement quietly channels billions of federal dollars into care for illegal immigration through state Medicaid programs. And states like California and New York are actually the most abusive of this law. These sanctuary states choose to allow illegal immigrants to receive state Medicaid programs, then send the bill to Washington, D.C. for all taxpayers to pay for it. It's not like they're being generous with just their taxpayer dollars, but that's spread across the entire system in the United States. States like California and New York manipulate provider taxes and use creative accounting to maximize federal reimbursement, thus shifting more of the burden to taxpayers across the country. And here's the gall of it all. New York even promotes free medical care for illegal immigrants with official state flyers encouraging them to use emergency services. I mean, that's pretty rich. I mean, you can think about it. They're saying, well, we're just using our state tax dollars. That's not the truth. They are promoting on taxpayer dollars this push to have, again, other people pick up the cost. So this is not some federalism deal where it's being just handled by one state. This is, again, realizing that someone else will pay the bill. Thus, they are being generous with other people's money. So to counter this myth that the Democrats are trying to push that illegal immigration does not cost the taxpayer dollars, it's just not true. And this is why I want people to look closely at what Medicaid is. Again, every Republican I've talked to, and I go across the country and talk about this issue, we want to provide Medicaid for seniors in nursing homes. We want to provide it for pregnant women. We want to provide it for kids. And we want to provide it for disabled. But when you upset that relationship by having people who are here illegally, you're actually potentially putting Medicaid programs at risk. And for those who really want to study the issues, there's a water balloon effect here. When Medicaid, which really doesn't reimburse doctors for their care, it causes private health care costs to go up. So imagine that the ire that so many people have. If you talk to a family of four and you talk to the parents, they're going to say, you know, for a family of four, I'm paying like $1,500 to $2,000 a month for private health care. And yet a person who comes into the country illegally pays zero in health care because they get Medicaid services where there is not even a copay. That's the ironic part about this, is that they break the law and they're rewarded for it. That undercuts the American dream, and people start thinking logically, well, why do I play by the rules? Maybe I'll manipulate a form so that I qualify for Medicaid, and they might never check it again. And that's happening today. People are even objecting to the idea that we check to see that a person still truly qualifies for Medicaid. That is theft from other taxpayers. So as the CBO confirmed, $18 billion in federal spending was put on emergency care, and these are just the facts that play out. And again, let's have the honest conversation. If you want to fund, then say it, but don't say that's not happening or burying it under your typical bureaucratic or political doublespeak. These are the conversations we need to have. And just so you all know, in the policy that we're looking at today, where we're going to, let's say, reconsider the budget, they're going to spend $45 billion for basically jails for illegal immigrants who come across, because if you don't have that jail space or the detention centers as they're looking at asylum, they go into the country. And that means you might not have a court case for a few years. And again, let's just think logically here. 10 million people. How many judges, lawyers, public defenders, bailiffs, and other folks do you need to actually have 10 million court cases in their version of due process? As our lead prosecutor today, Mr. Knott, will tell you that the law is simple. You came here legally. Your only thing you're justified or allowed is a ticket out of here. Let's be honest about immigration. This is about the rule of law, and I want to bring in a lot of folks. I want to have an immigration system that works, and you actually sign up, and you get online, and you find out who these folks are. Just like they check you on an airline, you should check you at the border. But instead, this previous administration literally said, here's the script, tell them this, you'll get the court case in years to come, and you can go into the interior of the country. That's double standard. And so I applaud Congressman Knott for taking this opportunity to talk about it in a real way, and my friends from North Carolina talk about how it impacts every one of us. It's taking from the system, causing people to pay more for insurance, and undercutting the rule of law. And that's why we had an election last year, and the voice was clear. The president said he would stop this crazy idea because we're already $1 trillion in debt year by year, $37 trillion in debt overall. This is common sense, and the president has finally stood up for those people who've been left behind the last 4 years. And so, Congressman Knott, thank you very much for taking on this real issue. It's the kind of discussion we need to have. And if the other side feels that we have not been telling the whole story, come out and have the debate. We'd love to see it. And with that, I yield back to the congressman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Congressman Haridopolos. I'm ready for that debate any day. I'm ready for that discussion any day. Again, the Republicans believe that American tax dollars should serve American citizens and not those who are here illegally. Next to speak is another representative from our great state of North Carolina, Congressman Mark Harris. Congressman Harris pointed out back in February that an NGO in North Carolina was actively working to hinder law enforcement, aid illegal immigrants, and further worsen the crisis engulfing our communities, both in North Carolina and all over our country. A pastor of more than 30 years, Congressman Harris is proof that allowing this humanitarian crisis to continue is not compassionate, and enforcing our laws is not hateful. It is with great honor that I yield to the gentleman from North Carolina's 8th District.
Well, thank you, Congressman Knott. And Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure today to be able to share in this time together. Grateful for you, Congressman Haridopolos, for sharing, also from Congressman Moore that we heard from earlier. And so I'm very honored to just be a part of this, and very thankful for the vision and the passion that Congressman Knott has shown in pulling together this special order. You know, when a burglar breaks into your house, you don't set a place for them at the dinner table. That principle seems pretty obvious. But for some reason, radical progressives just can't understand it. For the past 4 years, radical progressive Democrats have openly welcomed criminal aliens into American communities. Lest we forget, here are just a few of the violent guests the left has invited into our country. Felix Rojas, an illegal alien who was deported multiple times, was charged just last week for raping a corpse on a Manhattan subway. In my home state of North Carolina, 2 illegal aliens that Congressman Moore alluded to earlier, Paula Duran Duran and Miguel Duran Duran, were arrested for breaking into a home and kidnapping a mother and her 11-month-old daughter. Just outside Washington, D.C., an illegal alien, Hiron Rodriguez, was arrested by ICE after a local court dropped his charges. What was his crime that he was charged with? Abducting a 4-year-old. These heinous criminals are only a small number of those welcomed into our country by Joe Biden and were arrested in just the past few days by the Trump administration. So you can only imagine what is happening in our country on a grander scale. While under President Trump's leadership, illegal border crossings are down 95% from last year, and yet we are still suffering from the impacts and the open border policies of the last 4 years. The left did not just facilitate an open border invasion. They have made the American taxpayer pay for it, and we are still paying for it. Under former President Biden's open borders agenda, it's estimated that at least 10 million illegal aliens entered our country. And on top of the massive financial costs of the crimes they commit and the jobs they take away from Americans, a huge chunk of them have been accessing government benefits like Medicaid and Social Security. Mr. Speaker, this is unacceptable. Americans are hard workers. That's why we have the best country in the world, and they don't work back-breaking jobs their whole careers for their taxpayer dollars to subsidize the lives of the very invaders that have subverted their sovereignty. The left loves to fact-check, so why don't we take a moment and hear some cold, hard facts. Fact number one, under the Biden administration, more than 1 million illegal aliens received Medicaid benefits. Fact number two, in fiscal year 2024 alone, over 2 million illegal aliens were given Social Security numbers. Fact number three, a 2023 study showed that the net cost of illegal aliens to the American taxpayer was at least $150 billion annually. Fact number four, states are still having to bear the financial burden of Biden's border crisis. Texan taxpayers have to shell out $8.88 billion a year to pay for the illegal aliens who invaded their state. For Californians, it's almost $22 billion. By the way, fact number five, in some states, it's a complete affront to citizens. I'm talking about where illegal aliens can get mortgages, bank loans, insurance, driver's license, in-state college tuition, and free health care. For illegal aliens, the U.S. has been an all-you-can-eat buffet, but the American taxpayer and innocent women like Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungare, and Rachel Morin have paid the full price of the left's open border agenda. It's time to turn off the faucet permanently. American taxpayers shouldn't have to fund their own demise, paying for government programs that actually encourage an invasion. President Trump has shown us the path forward. Border crossings are down, as I mentioned earlier. Criminal aliens and gang members are being deported left and right. In other words, the forgotten American is first once again. But nevertheless, there's still much work to be done, especially in this 119th Congress. Under President Biden, Americans' hard-earned taxpayer dollars in the federal budget were used as a slush fund for the radical left to facilitate a border invasion of millions of illegal aliens, export their woke ideologies across the globe with wasteful pet projects, and weaponize the government against anyone who disagreed with their policies. But President Trump's budget proposal, when signed into law, will be a crucial step in taking our country back from the left. It will defund the wasteful government programs subsidizing illegal aliens and provide President Trump with the very tools to solidify his sensible border security initiatives. For example, President Trump's budget would eliminate the shelter and services program that facilitated swarms of illegal aliens into American communities and saved taxpayers $650 million at the same time. It will also stop funneling $428 million to migrant education programs that are taking away from struggling American students. And those are just a glimpse of the countless wasteful projects by which the American citizens should not be footing the bill. But it's up to Congress now to come together and advance both the president's budget and the reconciliation package across the finish line. Mr. Chairman, we owe nothing less to the American people who are tired of being placed behind illegal aliens. When illegal aliens are given benefits like Medicaid and Social Security by the thousands, they will keep coming into our country, burdening the American taxpayer and exacerbating the crimes in our cities. This is why it's so important that this Congress act now with budget reconciliation, give President Trump the tools he needs to keep both the wallet and the soul of America safe. Burglars are in the house, and they don't just want a seat at the dinner table. They want the entire spread. It's time for us to use this historic opportunity to correct our course. Again, I thank Congressman Knott for his vision and his leadership. And Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time to the gentleman from North Carolina.
Thank you very much, Congressman Harris. At least 1 million illegals on Medicaid. I would submit that I have heard not one syllable from the Democratic Party from 5 years ago when Joe Biden took power until today protesting that fact. The Republican Party wants to protect Medicaid and get the 1 million plus illegals on it out of the country and off of the program. Last but not least, Mr. Speaker, I will turn it over to Congressman Mike Kennedy, representing Utah's 3rd District. I mentioned earlier that some of the ridiculous benefits that taxpayers have unknowingly funded for illegal aliens include something as unique as music lessons. When digging into this issue, Congressman Kennedy and I were both outraged and simply shocked at the brazen and flagrant waste of funds on these perverse incentives. I know this Congressman, Mr. Kennedy, to be a fierce advocate for conservative principles, both for his district in Utah and for the country at large. I yield to the gentleman of Utah's 3rd District.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Congressman Knott, for shining much-needed light on this issue and for the opportunity that you've granted to me to speak. I rise today to speak about some of the consequences of the Biden-Harris administration irresponsible actions over the past 4 years and how Congress and the Trump administration are working to claw our way back to sanity for the United States of America. We have lived through the most devastating border crisis in modern American history. And let's be honest, it wasn't a natural disaster. It wasn't an accident. It was the direct result of bad choices made by the Biden-Harris administration. This wasn't mere mismanagement. It was facilitation. It was incentivization. And it was done at the expense of our laws, our national security, and our people. During their time in office, President Biden and Vice President Harris dismantled nearly every meaningful safeguard at the southern border. Their administration presided over a record surge in illegal immigration. Over 700,000 illegal aliens were apprehended at the border from October to December of 2023 alone. That was more than in any full year during the Obama presidency, when President Obama famously stated, quote, over 1,000 illegal border crossings a day would be considered a crisis, unquote. The Biden and Harris administration frequently allowed in 6,000 a day. Unfortunately, instead of restoring control and protecting our sovereignty, they did the unthinkable. They rewarded the lawbreakers. Rather than empower border enforcement, the Biden-Harris administration threw open the federal checkbook, funneling billions of taxpayer dollars to private nonprofits like Family Endeavors Incorporated, Southwest Key Programs, and Global Refuge. These NGOs didn't just shelter illegal aliens, they pampered them. Those contracts paid for luxury hotel rooms, room service, 24-hour snacks, laundry, bilingual television, recreation, cultural events, individual tutoring for mathematics and social studies. Most shockingly, pet therapy, music therapy, and horticulture therapy for illegal alien children. In 2021 alone, Endeavors paid Christy Merrill, a music therapist, $533,000 for her services. In addition to this nonsense, the nonprofit conducted 1,656 people-plant interactions and 287 pet therapy sessions between April 2021 and March 2023. This wasn't emergency aid, it was five-star treatment, funded by hardworking American families. Families that are struggling to pay their own rent and put food on their own table, much less providing them with music, plant, and pet therapy. I know many tax-paying American families that would love to be able to provide their children with one-on-one academic tutoring, but simply cannot afford it. This all begs the question, Why are we investing in illegal families while stripping financial resources from our own citizens to do so? In one case, Endeavors Incorporated, a Texas-based NGO, received a $1.3 billion contract from the federal government in a single year. Meanwhile, their top executives were paid over $600,000 annually, and the group spent more than $700,000 on lobbyists, all to keep the money flowing. Contrast that with the conditions our military service members faced during the same time. Moldy barracks, sewage overflows, and rodent infestations, to highlight a few. In 2022, a mere $56 million was spent on housing maintenance for military families, less than 1/20th of what was spent on luxury accommodations for illegal aliens. Who did the Biden-Harris administration care about? It certainly wasn't our men and women in uniform. Unfortunately, the extreme misuse of funds wasn't their only slight to the American public. The Biden-Harris administration relaxed vetting standards for those who claimed to sponsor alien children. DNA testing was scrapped and background checks were watered down. There were no public record checks required for other adults living in a sponsor's home, and tragic consequences followed. In one case, a 24-year-old Honduran man posed as a 17-year-old child and was placed with a sponsor in Florida, whom he later murdered. Sadly, that was not a one-off failure. This type of senseless violence became a regular news story. While Americans were working multiple jobs to afford rent and groceries, the Biden-Harris administration was funding a billion-dollar pipeline for unaccompanied aliens and empowering NGOs that had no incentive to solve the crisis, only to profit from it. They called it compassion. However, in reality, it was corruption, recklessness, and disregard for the rule of law. The good news is this: their time in office is over. However, the ramifications of their decisions persist. While our southern border is certainly more secure now, we have hundreds of thousands of illegal alien cases that will overwhelm our legal system for years. The nonprofit industry they supercharged is still bloated, and the American people are still waiting for real accountability. Now is the time to fix what they broke. We must defund corrupt NGOs, restore vetting and enforcement, and put the American people first again. We owe it to our citizens, we owe it to our troops, and we owe it to the integrity of this nation. The crisis wasn't spontaneous. It was built, funded, and incentivized. Let's make sure it's never repeated. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Kennedy. Mr. Speaker, you've heard today from my colleagues and myself about the outrageous government-funded incentives and plan to keep illegal aliens not only flowing into this country, but also to stay in this country. This scheme goes beyond waste, and it represents, candidly, a betrayal of the American people and the American taxpayers. Those have suffered mightily in this country because of the illegal immigration crisis. And in closing, I simply ask the following. To the American citizens who rely on Medicare or Medicaid, should we allow illegal immigrants to dilute the quality of your benefits and run up costs in emergency rooms who are precluded from turning illegal immigrants away? I say, along with my colleagues, absolutely not. No tax dollars should be allocated to covering health care costs for any person who is in this country illegally. To the American parents, whether rural or urban, who are struggling to feed your children, I ask, should illegal immigrants receive tax-funded meals day in, day out to eat on your dime? Again, I heartily say absolutely no. To the children at risk of falling behind in lagging schools all over this country, I ask, should we continue to allow millions upon millions to arrive here illegally and crowd out your classrooms? I say again, under no circumstances should we give public education dollars to any person or any family who is here illegally. To the Social Security recipient, should we take on more debt and endanger your access to continued benefits just to keep our borders open? With no hesitation, I again say absolutely not. We must protect tax dollars for American citizens. To the veterans who are battling homelessness or addiction, or the Western North Carolinians who were left without shelter following Hurricane Helene, should your tax dollars go to housing illegal aliens, to transporting illegal aliens, while you continually suffer? Again, I say definitively, under no circumstances is this appropriate. I urge all of my colleagues in Congress to join me in reversing the perverse incentive structure by sending a clear message that the United States laws are to be respected. Put candidly, if you are here illegally, leave.